Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we'll sit down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The daily ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing. We have Waterloo, directed by Sergei Bondarchuk. We have newly released films May-December by Todd Haynes, Silent Night by John Woo, Dream Scenario by Christopher Borgli, and finally, Godzilla Minus One, directed by Takashi Yamazuki. It's going to be a great show, folks, so stay tuned and enjoy. Vincent Daly, how we doing, buddy?
Tom, how's it going?
It's going okay. You're super loud again.
Super loud.
This is week 2, folks, of a new system. So we're still getting it.
The jump scare, the holiday jump scare.
Vin, how's your week of movies? We're sitting across from each other. We're drinking our Boilo. We're nice and toasty. Coal region drink.
Right. Further doxing us.
How was your week?
By regional drinks alone.
How was your week of movies, man?
Week was interesting. It was all over the place. Didn't really have a fifth new release unless I wanted to go see Trolls, whatever. Trolls 4.
That's been in theaters for a while. Yeah. That's all right.
So really was happy to not only find a free copy of Waterloo on YouTube, no less.
It's a newsletter. Thank you for sending that our way.
It was interesting. I like that when there's something that is just free that we can put out there for any kind of watch along. So hopefully some of you folks at home check out Waterloo on YouTube, because
there's like 3 different versions.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, there's 3 versions, all pretty high quality.
Yeah.
So that was awesome. You don't get a free movie often.
Yeah. I had one weird ad towards the end that just kind of stripped me out of the experience. But I mean, free's free.
Really? I had no ads.
Yeah.
I guess, and we also have ad blocker. God knows if you try to watch this 2-hour and 13-minute film, how many ads are going to be popping up.
Yeah.
But if you have ad blocker, YouTube, you can get Waterloo for free. I like this week of movies because it is random, it is weird, mostly new, which I always love getting new movies on.
Exactly.
Because there's so many new movies now that we're approaching the end of the year where people try to really, for the Oscars.
A lot of musicals, believe it or not. Both The Color Purple and Wonka are both full-fledged musicals.
Wow.
We'll have in the new year Mean Girls, which is a musical as well.
Forgot about Wonka.
I'm
okay with it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a big anniversary. I don't know why we're doing it exactly, but
yeah.
I'm a Timmy fan anyway. So
You're right.
But no, I like this week. I watched Waterloo and I watched Dream Scenario.
Okay.
And I kind of watched May-December. I didn't, but I kind of did. We'll get into that when we hit it.
It's great.
But basically, let's just get into it right. Well, and we have another Godzilla film.
Yeah.
So this is Japanese proper Godzilla film. Obviously, we just had our largest project we ever did,
which is the Godzilla special. Yep.
This is the one that just is coming out now. It's Japanese made.
Yep.
And then we have the U.S. new Godzilla movie coming out in 2024.
Yep. Exactly.
And then Apple just came out with Monarch Legacy of Monsters.
Yeah.
Which so far, episode 1 and 2 is poopy trash.
Oh, really? Okay. I didn't even bother checking it out.
We'll see what happens. Okay, all right. So let's get into it right away. Let's jump back into 1970. This is Waterloo. And the reason why we're covering this is I think it's pretty obvious. But let's get into it right away. Vin, let's set up the film a little bit. And how did you like Waterloo?
Yeah, so Waterloo is a super interesting film history case for any cinephiles out there, folks at home. This is a very interesting production story, and with little theme to the 4 new slots this week, I was going to watch what I wanted to watch, and damn it, I wanted to watch Waterloo.
Yeah, I was happy to see it.
My interest was piqued in research for our Napoleon review last week, and where I found the title battle in this movie had up to 15,000 Russian extras, all dressed to the nine in musket gear and this type of era-appropriate clothing. Nevertheless, though, it was a rabbit hole that I went down with this film because at the point of research, I didn't know I was going to be covering it. So I just kind of looked into reviews to see if it was worth the time, and this film was despised by critics at the time for its excess.
It was a box office bomb.
Yeah.
When it came out, box office bomb, and critics panned it.
Yeah,
essentially.
I mean, including Robert Ebert in that crowd as well, just absolutely skewering this film. Like this must have been like the Transformers of 1970. Like they hated the scale, they hated the excess.
So that's what they hated about it.
That, and there's a lot of critique around that. It's a half-ass attempt at trying to tell a Napoleon story, which I'll get into in a little bit. Yeah, those are the two sides of the skewering of this.
That's a good thing, but most of those critics aren't alive today after what we just had a couple weeks ago.
Shaking in his grave, Ebert. Yeah. This was a co-production between Italian financing through Dino De Laurentiis and Soviet-Russian director Sergei Bondarchuk. Dino is, as a producer, has plenty of gems connected under him over the years, but Sergei is a bit harder to distinguish. He has a little bit of an acting career. His directing is around these kind of grandiose projects like 1966's War and Peace, and that kind of defines his career as these like big book or historical pieces, period pieces.
Yeah, I didn't recognize the name too much.
Yeah.
Now, this was the one when we talked about Napoleon, I was talking about a guy who wanted to do a massive, like, 3-part movie. And I think this was him.
Oh, really?
And he ended up doing Waterloo, which is just settling really Napoleon during this post coming back
from first exile.
Right, from first exile and then into Waterloo. I think he wanted to make it 3-part movies over his life, basically.
Wow.
And then I think through studios and money, you know what I mean, what happens.
A Soviet production as well.
This is This was a guy who cared.
Yes.
Majorly.
Yes.
I mean, just look at the amount of extras, but he cared so much, and it's just such a stark contrast between this guy who we don't really know and a Ridley Scott in the year 2023.
And watching these films back to back was surreal. Like, boy, are they just polar opposite approaches to the subject matter, to a period piece. Yeah. The story here, folks, in Waterloo strategically focuses on the moments after Napoleon's first exile to Elba and his dramatic return to power, and I really mean dramatic. This sequence of events are not only historic, but made for the big screen for how theatrically things play out. I mean, his return, him kind of turning everyone on his side, and then just marching almost without resistance back into France and back into leadership is huge. Let me say that watching this and how this movie portrays that, you will really see how pathetic, and I mean pathetic, how Ridley Scott's attempt was. Not only did that attempt with Napoleon that we covered last week try to cover way too much, it downplays real bombastic events in his life like these moments. Just seeing them done up to the 9 in this was satisfying. Yeah, it was really satisfying.
Absolutely, totally.
Yeah, I'll say the portrayal here might feel a little bit overkill. We'll talk about some hammy acting in a second with this film, but it fits the expectations of the audience, fits the expectations of the history, and is satisfying for what we want that history to be in approaching a historical biopic or a historical piece like this. Like we spoke about just a second ago, what shocks me is that some of the critique around this film is around the story telling a narrow history of Napoleon. Personally, I have always been a believer that a good story centers on the most important moments in a character's life, or at least that is the mark of a story worth telling. A perfect example of something that does this is like Darkest Hour. Not an amazing movie, but do we see the focus of Darkest Hour zone in on all of Churchill's life? Right. No. It's a character-defining event that puts him to the test and gives a spotlight to the audience to see how this character matches up in his, not his greatest moment, but a great moment.
Sorry, it took me a second to be reminded with Darkest Hour.
Sorry.
That came out maybe 5 years ago?
1999. 2013, I want to say.
Okay, so 4 or 5 years ago, and that was what's-his-face portrayal of...
Gary Oldman of Winston Churchill.
Which everyone agreed, great performance. Sure. Movie was a little blah.
Yeah, a little blah, definitely a little Oscar bait.
Yeah, definitely.
But I feel like as far as a kind of a biopic history piece like this,
yes,
you don't need to tell the entire history of it. We need to see the character-defining moments of what the legend is a legend for in the first place. And I feel like that's identical here for how this story portrays Napoleon's attempt at redemption. The most important moments of his first exile, turning everything around and having one last go at the title battle, of course, being Waterloo.
And that's why I love the title of Waterloo, because you know what to expect.
Yeah, sure.
That's why when you take the title of
half the movie
Napoleon,
yeah.
Man, it's just, that's why we were talking about the Bonapartes.
Yeah,
Josephine and Napoleon or something like that would have been just so much more acceptable after what was done with Ridley. This, absolutely. You walk in knowing exactly what you're getting. And like you said, they hone in on that. That's what they focus on. And that's what you get.
Yeah.
And it's great.
Absolutely. I would say maybe it's a little bit of a burden to the film that over half the runtime is the Battle of Waterloo, which can be a combination of boring, exhausting, impressive. I mean, it's a real mix. In my book, good story writing starts with the defining moment in a character's life.
Yeah.
This movie has it where it counts with that. So I completely disagree with the narrow portrayal or that critique of this film then. This movie itself is a lot more hammy than I expected, but for my enjoyment, this was a good thing. This made me feel the gravitas of Napoleon as a historical figure. With that said, I mean, wow, is there some overacting from, what's the guy's name? Rod Steiger?
Steiger, yeah.
He's been in plenty of stuff too that unfortunately nothing's coming to mind right now. But it basically makes it seem like Napoleon was only the leader because he spoke the loudest. He's just the loudest one in the room.
Loud.
He's so loud.
He does an amazing job, even when in the outdoor scenes, when he's speaking to an entire crowd or standing on a balcony, and it's like, this is how they Because sometimes you watch stuff or something when someone's making a huge speech. I mean, notably, one of the worst parts of all the Lord of the Rings movie is when Sauron is talking to the army, and he's just kind of like talking at a normal voice. How's the guy in the back hearing this? How's the guy in the back hearing this, really? What's going on here? It's doing some wizard projecting a little bit.
Right.
With this, you watch it, and it's like Rod Steiger is freaking...
He's killing it.
He is killing it. He's yelling without screaming. Like, he's still able to talk. See,
Absolutely.
I think you would be great at playing Napoleon. You have such a booming voice.
I would love to play
that
Napoleon.
Can permeate through brick walls at times, it seems. But hammy, but the right guy for the job.
Exactly, and I think hammy in the right moments. I personally really love this performance. I see where it could be seen as bad. Maybe this just highlights me in liking something that's technically bad. We'll call it Predator 2 syndrome. So this performance specifically falls in that same category that I see how it's cartoonish. I see how it could be bad, but I think it fits the bill for what's going forward.
I did have one thing I was thinking of with these performances, and I don't know if this is just me kind of talking out of my ass on this one, but when you get to a film that's now over 50 years old and older films, the way the sound is done, the way edits are kind of sewn together, having a more, or the way the cuts are, or maybe close-ups or not close-ups, it's almost like having the actors express themselves in a more charismatic or more hammy way for those older films, you almost give a longer leash to. And like the biggest example would be in watching a play, because you're literally watching from far away, people on a stage, and they're really overdoing it. Their makeup is overdone. With these older films, I feel like this guy doing this, just the fact that it's an older movie like this, the hamminess is sold better for a 2023 watch. I don't know if that makes sense. If this guy was doing this now with modern cinematography the way things are edited and shot, it would be like...
What's happening here?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
I think it's also... That observation also comes because we are... It's like an ice bath coming off of Joaquin's performance, which is so so little, arguably not trying even in a lot of scenes. So I absolutely agree with you. I think there's something to be said about this coming out in 1970 on the dot.
Yeah.
And then also what is in very recent history of what we watched with this story. So among the cast, we get a brief appearance from Orson Welles, which I personally love to say added to the ham. If he wasn't clearly falling asleep in his chair,
he just was a ham on screen.
Exactly. This is prime wino Orson Welles. Absolutely. It was brief, but I enjoyed it.
Yep.
I can't say I enjoyed how the British were depicted in here. We get Christopher Plummer, who I think is kind of disappointingly underutilized in creating a compelling antagonist. The British are depicted as overly confident, still a little bit ragtag, confident that they don't even need to try, and it comes off a bit goofy for that reason. Did you kind of get that?
Interesting. I didn't quite get that. I'm okay with hearing that now. I could see how you got there. My big thing with the British was, I thought Christopher Plummer looked awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was very cool.
Yeah,
he was extremely cool in the film. Probably might be my favorite performance of the film.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. The stuff with dealing with the British was more so issues I had with the film in entirety, which was things are kind of happening, and I feel like it's a little bit difficult for the audience to really know what's going on sometimes. So that definitely goes on for the battle sequences.
Yep.
Wishing that we were clued in a little bit more, or shown maps, or just
something.
Because it's so massive, it's almost unwieldy.
Yeah.
Unwieldy. And for the British, we're really introduced, or we really spend a lot of time with them battle with this big ball that's going on, and there's just a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I think just with
more candles than I've ever seen.
I'm glad you said something about the candles. This, not only the people, the amount of people, the amount of candles, and the incredible, really, they're all practical too, all practical effects.
Yeah, right.
The set pieces were really good.
Yeah.
Uniforms were really good, and just the candles were a many.
Absolutely.
But that's my biggest thing, where there's just always so much going on when the British are on screen that it's hard for me to, get a feel for him a little bit more, be as connected as maybe you want to be to a Christopher Plummer, who's like, you want to either be really rooting for him or hate him, but love him about how cool he is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my main takeaway, though, more than anything, is I just really enjoyed the filmmaking here, which I feel like we're probably on the same page on, with all the practical effects and all the costumes and the set work and whatnot. Little stylistic moments pepper the film where bold shot is thrown in, or an actor breaks the fourth wall, and it was enjoyable seeing some risk being taken, even if they all necessarily didn't pay off on this film. Of course, at the center of this praise is the massive production itself. This remains one of the largest productions in history, and without special effects on the battlefield, captures a scale that is unbelievable. Now, I'll talk about that scale in kind of legibility in just a second, but when you consider the costume work and the choreography needed to achieve some sort of realistic musket line type of look to the many extras, it becomes seriously impressive feat.
Yeah.
I would say what takes this away is, unfortunately, when they get to the battlefield, there is a lot of ADR overdubbed lines.
Oh, big time.
Almost exclusively that, and it just...
Go into what that is a little bit.
So this is just where the actual recording on set is not going to be used in the final production of the film. That would be called a scratch track or something like that. And mostly all of the audio lines are going to be overdubbed by the actor in a studio after the fact.
Yeah.
Then. Old films like this, 1970 included, this is where you're going to get maybe some desynced lips with actually what's being said.
Definitely.
And that can actually really turn off a lot of people from older films in period, just for the lack of technical sophistication. But here, that those overdubbed lines, they just don't sound great in comparison to, I almost wish we got the real chaos of what must have been the sound of that. It was filmed in Ukraine, this open field. It would have been interesting, but I don't know.
I don't know how they would have done it. He was definitely going for so much authenticity that maybe they even tried, and it's like, this is not possible.
Yeah.
All the explosions are real.
Yeah.
Some scenes you're watching, it's like, okay, horses died here.
Yeah,
Horses for sure
horses.
died.
Yeah.
By the way, I have 15,000 soldiers.
Yep.
I have 2,000 cavalrymen on top of that.
Oh, on top.
I believe so. That's what I had read.
Wow.
And then 70 circus stunt riders. And those are the ones falling off the horses.
Yeah.
Seriously impressive. I agree with the sound. And they wanted to use, when they're shown battalions or certain, I even know at that point, but they wanted to use real numbers.
Yes.
So they're just moving around the 15,000, but to actually be real numbers, so you can see what it actually looked like.
Yeah.
Incredible. It is just gets chaotic.
It doesn't have legibility to it.
And with the sound and trying to keep up, it's tough. It's a little bit tough for the audience to be fully in the know.
Absolutely. And that's really where I kind of finish my thoughts on the film. I think, with over half of the film's runtime being the Battle of Waterloo, it sadly prevents me defending the film a bit more, because simply it's a lot to get through. Like I said, it's equally impressive. I think cinema nerds, or if you're into the productions of film, this is a great watch on top of it's free, to just try to examine what's actually going on behind the scenes of these scenes. The scenes itself, though, the battle itself, does not have legibility on screen. It's very hard to tell what the hell is going on half the time, which is so funny because it's on the polar opposite end of the spectrum of Napoleon last week, Scott's Napoleon, where battles are just so overly simplistic that it's like, okay, well,
especially
is it a battle
Waterloo. Waterloo is like on the tiniest little field.
Yeah,
you don't have no idea of the scale.
Exactly.
It's a totally different battle watching this movie to Napoleon.
Absolutely. If anything, this made me reflect a lot on how battles are done in other films, mainly the Lord of the Rings trilogy and Saving Private Ryan, in how battle legibility is such a challenge for a film. While anyone could be impressed with how many soldiers on screen, it's difficult to tell moment-to-moment stakes. I think back to Helm's Deep and Two Towers, where it's so well communicated of which side is winning, how the tides are turning within such a long battle, and certainly a lot of scale similar to this film. Maybe not, exactly, but as far as costume work and everything like that, I feel like maybe it also boils down to a simple fact that I don't know if the costume work was defined enough to tell which side is which.
There's just so much going on. There is so much going on.
Exactly.
Even almost at that point when people are talking, or if you're going to do the in studio sound, I honestly show me a map more.
Yeah.
Be that, treat us like children more, because there's so much. Yeah, absolutely. The funny thing, I was thinking about that Helm's Deep scene last week, because it took 3 months to shoot, which is longer than the entire film with Napoleon took. But that's
good.
I guess, neither here nor there.
No, that's definitely here. That's definitely right on. So, but yeah, that's kind of what the mental exercise came from in watching this film of battle literacy in movies. And similar, I would point to Saving Private Ryan, if only just for the crazy oneer that you get with the tank and sniping scenes and whatnot. It's about communicating the stakes to the film, and I feel like of the scale, certainly it's to be applauded, but
it is fantastical.
It just loses a little bit there.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I think the experience sits on opposite ends of the spectrum, like I said, for what we covered last week. But I personally will take it over downplaying what is expected to be grand. I will take the approach to be grand itself. We're going to go ahead and give Waterloo 1970 a 71.
Okay, 71%. I really didn't know where you were going to land on this, because there's elements even that can be a little bit boring. I thought the battle scene was super fantastical, so it's just a visual feast for the eyes a little bit. You might be confused a little bit, but it's something.
You still get those scenes where he's just doing a total 360 with the camera, and you just see the entire battlefield and all the extras.
It's wild. It is wild. But leading up to that, too, can be a little bit just boring, a little bit taxing. Yeah, I think I like 71 a lot. I think that's impressive for a 53-year-old movie also at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not going to give it a 2 shoes, but I would totally recommend it. Check out. It is, from my research, no production has had more people as far as extras go. Still to this date, this is the most ever used for a film to be made.
Which is great.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So we definitely highly recommend watching the Waterloo battle scene of Waterloo, 1970. So. And
I'll be honest, maybe there's a slight factor here in that both of us are positive on this film because Ridley Scott's Napoleon was so immensely disappointing in the ways that this movie wins as well.
Right.
But yeah, I mean,
I found it pretty easy to judge either one.
Yeah.
Because they're different. They're such different movies. And one is just
and Napoleon, the actual performance,
right? Oh my gosh,
the character on screen is so different.
Don't expect a lot of French accents still.
Yes, I booted it up. Well, I thought it was going to be in Russian because Bondarchuk is like an actual Soviet director.
Right.
So I was just impressed that it had English at all. But I thought of you immediately. I was just like, oh, another one. No one's even trying to do French accents.
Oh, man. Okay. All right, Vin. Well, let's go ahead and get right into our donation segment then, Vin, because we have 4 new films yet again.
Yeah.
5 last week, 4 new this week. It's awesome. So, okay, folks. So we do have a producer for this week. It is a returning producer. Maxwell Farnsworth came in, and he came in with $24, and he writes, 2 movie tickets. Is there a donation tier that would allow me to fight you two?
The cage match.
How about this? Keep on donating, and we'll just see.
We'll just see.
Just don't stop donating.
We'll catch you in the streets. You'll catch these hands.
Max, thank you so much. You are the executive producer of episode 111. You continue to be a producer in total for the daily ratings. Folks, if you're wondering what's going on here, Vin and I, the daily ratings, we are...
Wait, hold up.
What?
That was his note?
That's right. Two movie tickets, which he took the change off. Technically, it should be around 25 and change, but that's right. $24.
All right.
2 movie tickets. Is there a donation tier that would allow me to fight you two? Yes, correct. That is it. End of note.
That's fantastic.
End of line.
I love that.
Max, thank you so much. Again, just keep on donating and we'll see. I don't know. But
we gotta fund the cage match.
Yeah.
We gotta that's when we'll take sponsors, maybe. I don't know if we're gonna have a value for value.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. God, who would be our sponsors too? Ridiculous. Okay, so like I said, producer of episode 111. Folks, we are completely producer supported, so we are not going to deal with corporate advertising. We are not going to sell you a bunch of crap for basically our benefit, our gain. We want to stay true to you. We just want to stay producer supported, which is just like Max. You become a producer by donating into the show. So you can go to the, yes, what's that, Vin? A very good, functional, working donation page.
Yes. Round of applause to Tom. He is now an honorary IT of the Daily Ratings production.
So we have had this, the worst donation page that we have been paying. This plugin that we tried to been using and paying for.
Yep.
It's been trash ever since the beginning. It's been trash for the past few weeks. Unusable. So finally, if you go to thedailyratings.com, go to the donations tab, it's all there. The value for value payment, which is whatever value you are getting from the daily ratings, just put a number to it, send it our way. But there's also set donations. You can do monthly, weeklies you can set up. It's all right there. Our Venmo is there. Satoshi's if you're into podcasting 2.0. It's all right there at thedailyratings.com on the donations tab. Finally. We're going to work on it a little bit more, but it's all there, thank God.
Yeah, and fully functioning. The website is no longer dead in the water, and we appreciate anyone that has held off on a donation to just when we get things straightened out on our end.
And it's there, thank God.
Yeah.
But again, like I said there, folks, it's a value for value model, which basically means, are you enjoying the podcast? Are you having a good time every week? Are you using the website legitimately when you just want to sit down and watch a movie? Did we make you laugh or cry laughter, whatever? The point is, that's value in your pocket. Can you send us some value back in our pocket? So, we don't have tier structures here because $100 or $5 is so much different from this person to that person, whatever. All the content is here for you. It's technically free. But we just ask, we put so much time and energy into this. It does cost some money to do this and a hell of a lot of time. Many, many hours on a weekly basis goes into this. So if you're finding it valuable, can you send some value back our way? So Max decided to send us 2 movie tickets here for $24, Max. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the ring at a later date. You were executive producer,
TBA.
like I said, of 111. Thank you so much, Max. And people, don't forget, it is thedailyratings.com and head over to the donations tab. Just a quick reminder too, the newsletter comes out every Tuesday morning. If you want to sign up for that, you go down to the bottom of the website, put your name and email, and you'll be good to go. All right, Vin, with that, let's keep things moving to our now in theaters newly released film. And this one is not in theaters, so let's get this one out of the way. This is a new Netflix release. This is by Todd Haynes. This is called May December with two big-time lead actresses. So let's get into it right away. Maybe why this, or in general, how'd you like it?
Well, I think this movie was getting a lot of critical buzz, and that's why it was on my radar versus actually a fair amount of Netflix releases we just flat out didn't get to this year.
Yeah,
you know?
Ed Helms just came out with one.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, there's always the comedy circuit of Netflix that I don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole.
Bill Burr came out with one recently.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Writing-wise, this shares a talent with Sammy Birch, who was a part of the Hunger Games series as a casting director, so kind of an interesting jump from casting director to writer. And this is now her first script picked up for feature, collaborating with Alex Mechanic, who is a similar newcomer. And honestly, this was a pure blind watch for me, which I'm kind of regretting not understanding at least the angle of the story or watching a trailer or something like that.
Okay.
Because I found myself frustrated in the first hour of this, seeing the exact tone the film wanted to take, which is interesting and a little bit controversial, certainly.
Like I said, I kind of watched this, but
when did you turn off?
So this was purposely my fall asleep movie. When I didn't even want to watch it. I was just like, all right, I'll have this on and fall asleep too. So read 3 different times in the middle of the night, woke up and it's just like, what's going on here? This looks terrible. This looks boring and god awful. It's billed as a comedy and drama. I was not getting any comedy.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
And I think that's a total miscast or misportrayal of
the genre.
This,
all right.
Because it is. I feel like if you're trying to see it as a comedy, that's where this movie gets weird and a little uncomfortable with it. So, in May, December, possibly one of the worst titles.
It's a bad title.
Yeah, it's a bad title. Natalie Portman plays an actress named Elizabeth. Doing research for a semi-controversial documentary role. The subject of this documentary is Julianne Moor's character Gracie, who some time ago was involved in a scandalous relationship with an underage boy. Now her husband, played by Charles Melton. Charles Melton comes from Riverdale fame. I've heard terrible things about that show.
Okay.
He was actually pretty decent in this, so maybe he can shed some of that low budget TV fame. We unpack the uncomfortable reality of this slowly, and the most important factors aren't necessarily told to us directly. I feel like the most important aspect of this is that the original age divide is a perfect example. Gracie being 36 with having an affair with a 7th grader.
Really?
Yeah, that is the subject here. And obviously, after the aftermath of that specifically, what unfolds is a high-strung drama that picks the scabs of our characters to reveal all sorts of insecurity, trauma, and immaturity that has been suppressed for so many years. I have no idea where this gets off calling it even slightly a comedy.
It just wasn't good.
I certainly wasn't laughing. But normally I would stay away from any spoilers. That little bit of a dive into how exactly this underage relationship or this pedophile relationship.
Yeah, the premise is weird. So Julianne's Moore character is aware and allows what's-her-face character to like come and shadow her.
Yeah. Basically, the backstory is that she has already done the jail time, was pregnant
I was going to say,
in
shouldn't
jail.
the movie end with her being in jail? Okay.
Right. Already done the jail time,
Gotcha.
was pregnant in jail, and now we see... I guess in some ways, especially for the script writing element of this, the rare look into the aftermath of how does that relationship actually exist.
And she ended up marrying the 7th grader.
Yes.
Okay.
Who now they have 2 children. The children are going to college themselves. Melton is playing like early 30-something in this, so it's definitely odd. But if it's going to be a recommendation anywhere, it's in the emotional. Again, picking at the scabs.
Yeah.
It's designed to kind of Portman's visiting of the family is creating a lot of pressure and uncovering a lot of stuff that has just been brushed aside for so many years.
Is the audience made to feel bad for Julianne Moore's character?
A little bit. But it is definitely great. It is definitely great.
Okay. Well, the post-Me Too world, like, this is getting critical buzz.
Yeah.
In fact, some of the ratings are just going through them now.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Oh, sure.
For a film like this.
Sure.
It's just like, it just seems so hypocritical.
Yeah, I'm definitely there with you. I will say, to the film's credit, it does make things gray, but there is also a uncomfortable accepting quality to the town as a whole that has dealt with this controversy for so long. So there's a pensive soundtrack and a serious tone to the film, like Portman is stepping into something strange, and she really is. The story doesn't shy away from the controversial angle here, but it also doesn't do a great job with spotlighting it either. If there was anything I would say to describe the tone of the film, is that it's intentionally gray. It also feels like an older style drama that would be ripe for Oscar bait, let's say out of like the early 90s. It feels like an Oscar bait film, but also an older style of an Oscar bait film.
Screenplay-wise, acting-wise?
Top to bottom, really. And maybe, if anything, driven home the most through this kind of pensive piano soundtrack that is put there. For a lot of reasons, I just was not hooked by this, mostly for this muddied spotlight, but my opinion was really solidified for me when the emotional beats would come and the story has little to say. In that story-wise, I was engaged. I was looking to unpack this situation, but many scenes offer little new information. Whether I was about that information or not, completely aside, the actual information that is unpacked in the film is drip-fed. It's crumbs. Because the scandal overtook the town so many years ago, a lot of scenes with Portman are just drilling down on the same info again and again. We get different perspectives from people, really anyone you can think of, but it takes forever for a real impact to happen with the story, or a new nugget that is not repeated to be unfold. Without a doubt, what is really interesting is puzzling together the bizarre parts of trauma and love that are in these characters. But I'm sorry, just too little unfolds to keep my attention. And that's where, boy, if you chose the right film to fall asleep to, it really was.
And I did.
I love that you're waking up in a fever dream and still hating this. A cold sweat.
Kind of seems just like a snoozer.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It is. Okay. Portman's good. Like I said, Charles Melton, I think he was the best in the film.
Really? I usually like Julianne Moore.
Yeah, same. I think they were both good. And if anything, with Portman's credit, she plays a very interesting character. Almost not an antagonist, but definitely an aggressor. She's trying to poke the bear a little bit.
Coming across as almost journalist.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Because I guess she kind of is. She's trying
to. This is a documentary. She also does have kind of an undefined role, of more of a creative role in this.
Okay.
Than just being the actress playing Gracie.
Hollywood loves this. Hollywood loves movies about them, kind of.
Yeah.
We're gonna look at the actor, doing a study, studying for a role.
Sure.
This is very much just stroking own ego a little bit.
I honestly, I can't defend it because it is. It is. It focuses a lot on Portman's acting process as well in covering a controversial character.
Can be cool.
Yeah,
I mean that can be all right. Okay.
I'm with you. I don't know if it was here.
I like both these two actresses.
Yes.
I like that they're in a movie together.
Yeah.
I just wish it was more electric then.
Yeah. I just think the big moments that we get confrontation around the question on all of our minds often doesn't reveal much more than having emotion charge the scenes themselves. It's no different, once again, than just repeat information again and again, this time with some heavy crying. And that's where I say, again, believe it or not, I think Charles Melton is probably the best in this for this reason. He shows a lot of depth to his character being, let's call for what it is, the victim.
Right.
In this. And it's great to see him hang with such tenured stars like Portman and Moore then. So, but sadly, I don't think it's enough And more importantly, I don't think it's enough to escape this Netflix package that feels as forgettable as its own name. We're going to go ahead and give December a 56.
Oh, 50s. Okay, so above 50s. Okay, so basically performances were really okay. Story just kind of meh. And the way it developed. Just meh.
Underdeveloped, doesn't... It kind of circles the drain. It's been a while since we've levied that critique.
Yeah.
But definitely a circle the drain type of movie. And yeah, I think it's designed to be a spotlight for emotional performances. If Portman, Moore, or Melton is one of your favorites or someone that you really want to see in a critical capacity, that's where I think this lands on the positive side of the ratings.
Okay, all right. So that's 56 for May, December. It's for an audience somewhere out there. Just not for the, just not for the masses.
I think the puddle is going to be called Netflix. It's just called Netflix.
Let's keep things moving here. Again, this is kind of a smaller film. It's out in theaters now. Kind of a big director. This is John Woo directing. This is called Silent Night. And I feel like this has some similarities to a film that just came out as well. But Silent Night, Vin, how do we like it?
Well, I'll tell you what. It is... a disappointing movie.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I really was rooting for this to the point that producer Matt D was challenging me and saying, "Oh, why are you actually covering this? What's the matter with you?" Which I thought Woo was enough. I thought concept was enough, but it really wasn't.
Yeah, let's start with John Woo. Basically, we know him from Mission Impossible 2, which again, not many people like. You like?
I love Mission Impossible 2. That's all. Yeah, that can be in the Predator 2 syndrome.
Yeah.
For sure.
And Woo is a little bit of, he's extremely well known and respected in many ways. Oh,
absolutely. I would without a doubt call him the godfather of Kung Fu.
Oh, okay.
Woo is a huge force on shaping how action is done. If anything, I didn't put it down in my notes, but I was kind of interested in returning to the Matrix movies, at least Matrix 1, to just study the influences of Matrix. And John Woo, with like Hard Boiled and Better Tomorrow, would absolutely be in that.
Did he work on Raid Redemption?
No.
The Raid?
No.
Okay.
So funny you bring it up because, boy, could this movie learn a lot from Raid and also John Wick, which I feel like it tries to copy in a lot of areas and just falls flat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So let's get into it a bit. What are we dealing with here?
Well, Silent Night is a completely... not silent movie, but around a silent protagonist played by Joel Kinnaman. Last year when we did the Christmas action movie episode, we wound up spending the idea on 2022's Violent Night.
Yes.
Honestly, I was just in borderline denial about this movie coming out because, boy, it would be just perfect for that episode. Right. I was kicking myself for spending the idea. I think when it comes down to this movie, I feel like the perfect description for it is that it sounds better on paper than actually the experience of it.
I like how this movie is set up.
Yeah, absolutely. Silent Night stars Joel Kinnaman as his typical badass role, but only becomes one when he is cut down in his prime by a gangster shooting him in the throat. That's right, folks. Silent refers to our main dude not having a voice because his vocal cords are shot out. But hold on to your seats because it's taken to one step further with little to no dialogue, period.
Yeah, that's like film. Zero, just about.
Yeah, basically zero. You hear voices on the radio, you hear voices in the distance, but even characters interacting with him don't talk
really
to him for some reason. Yeah, it feels video game-ish in a lot of ways.
So this is where I bring it back to a film that we watched recently, which is The Killer on Netflix. And you had made a comment of saying, I just wish he never talked. Because it's very little dialogue.
And boy, I'll kick myself a second time for saying that because this wasn't good. I'll take The Killer any day of the week over this one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I know. It sucks because I feel it fails on a lot of different levels, even though there's an attempt almost on everything it has going for it. Christmas movie, action movie.
John Woo movie?
Yeah, exactly. John Woo coming back for this. But I would maybe be all right with this if the action was phenomenal, but even that feels uncharacteristic for our director. What is shocking is that how straight this movie plays it. The establishing first 30 minutes are sad and slow, with the focus exclusively on his grieving to give Kinnaman his motivation. There is exactly zero comedy in this as well, which is admittedly something that a lot of audiences could find refreshing in modern day movies.
Huh, okay.
But it further drags the pacing to a painfully slow first hour, where there's no action. It's just this silent brooding, silent looking mean at these gangsters around town.
You want that to be 15 minutes.
Yes, exactly.
Just kill John Wick's dog and get into it.
Sure. And I feel like a little bit of a hypocrite because what do I praise John Wick for? The slow burn, the build up to the action. Here we needed Kinnaman to just be
going
a John Woo character.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We needed him to just already know the skills. I think worst of all, and I really mean worst of all, it's barely a Christmas movie. I mean, Christ, you think with all of this...
is that really...
Oh, yeah, it really is. It really is. Christ, you think with all of this real estate in silent characters, you would get some Christmas tunes. It's insane how they couldn't even get the title track of Silent Night playing in the movie. It doesn't play in the movie.
Okay, all right. I didn't think you were into the Christmas idea so much with this.
The thing is like, why make an action movie like this if it's not?
Right.
It's designed to be a Christmas action movie.
Okay,
and I feel like that's a particular failure that it really doesn't feel like Christmas at all. And I just was so not about it. I was so it was just like, oh my God, what? And there's plenty of soundtrack to this, but like. It's all, I don't know. It's kind of badass music, man.
It didn't take cues from, well, even like a Die Hard that has
Sure.
Christmas music sometimes going on in the background.
Absolutely,
and that adds some levity to it as well.
Yeah. So even if you don't want jokes being cracked, or if, with this no dialogue approach, even if you're not looking to have actual jokes being slung by characters,
right.
You can have brevity in throwing a funny Christmas song or even annoying Christmas song in the mix of these action sequences. You know what I mean? I just think it was just a total failure at what it was going for.
You've changed. That guy wants to see more Christmas.
I out of this premise, I wanted more Christmas in it. It's exactly like 2% Christmas. Action sequences feature a lot of slow-mo, which is 100% on brand for John Woo, of course. But it is a pathway to the dark side. The dark side in this case being mid-budget CGI.
Okay.
And mid-budget CGI that does not look great. If anything, we'll touch on CGI a little bit with Godzilla Minus One, and with almost a staggeringly small budget, does a great job.
Yeah,
in
15
comparison.
million only to make that film.
Yeah.
15 mil.
Yeah. Honestly, one of the more frustrating parts is how much the story makes you wait for the action. It's the exact opposite of what this needed. I'll give some credit to it showing extensive training to make things feel realistic and make the motivation there for Kinnaman and the audience, but this movie did not need to be realistic. This needed to be a crazy John Woo action film.
Yeah. Christmas themed.
Right, a Christmas John Woo action film. That was the elevator pitch. I was told. I was betrayed in the theater. A dude snoring in the back.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
So that is the thing with John Wick. I understand there's slow moments of John Wick, but you're in a different realm when you're watching those films. It really is. Let's take 15 minutes to get the dog, kill the dog, and here we go. Maybe 20.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And this is an hour and 44. I think the first John Wick is right around there.
Yeah.
You can't be wasting, more than half the film.
Yeah.
Well, more than half the film.
It's little things too. It's not giving spotlight to your villain.
Okay.
Again, John Wick. I'm trying my best not to bring it up, but it's also the spotlight you give to making a compelling villain by having everyone be silent. We don't really get much more depth behind the villain other than, oh yeah, he's a badass gangster type with some crazy tattoos. I feel like that, once again, hurts pacing most of all, because we can see him work out angrily and train
right.
for the first hour before a single soul dies, but it's just like, I don't care. I don't think the inciting incident is enough, and I think the feel of the movie, the feel of the story is dulled by just so much silence, so much silent night, and no Christmas music. Once we finally get there, it's primarily car action, too, which feels a little bit too late to copy John Wick. I'll give some credit. Wu is an absolute lunatic with his shots, as usual. He just doesn't play by any rules. Some of his editing choices are so stylized that they make other parts of the film feel boring once again. In the very beginning, there's this shot that zooms in on the wife's eye, and it's just like, no one, who told him he could do that? It's just, it's ridiculous. I think this film was just disappointing on so many levels. Was it outwardly bad? Maybe not. I feel like it just failed at what it was going for. You know, we talked about, with Waterloo hitting kind of the marks it was after, being the right fit. This was the wrong fit in every way. I want to make an odd comparison to close this out because the movie really doesn't deserve much more time. But it's not to other action films. Like I said, frankly, this movie could learn a lot from many places, mainly The Raid and John Wick, which I think it rips off. It rips off also another stairwell scene that feels right out of The Raid. Rather, this movie reminded me of Skinamarink earlier this year, both having these concepts of utter silence that certainly sound interesting on paper, but fall very, very short when actually experiencing the film. This movie did not have it on either side of concept or Christmas. We're going to go ahead and give Silent Night a 33.
Wow, 33%.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was
okay, all right. I mean,
disappointing.
That's very disappointing. I thought for sure, just because of the talent behind it, that we were going to get something.
I know.
Or just be like, okay, bad movie, but like Boys Watch, action flick.
Boys Watch, good action, but it's a copycat.
Maybe John Woo. I mean, it sounds like Chad Stahelski is the man now. You know,
absolutely.
Who is the guy who did Raid and Raid Redemption?
That's a Gareth. Wait, I actually have Gareth Evans.
Okay,
is the guy?
Is he Korean?
No, actually, he's a white guy.
It sounds very white.
yeah. But yeah, he has that. I believe the Raid comes from Indonesian fight industry.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Which is interesting, and just so nothing else like it.
As far as like a top of the industry now, it is Chad Stahelski.
Yeah,
which you know, hey. Good for him.
I think so.
Okay, all right. So that's 33% for Silent Night. Let's keep things going now. You've been excited to watch this one. Like I said, I saw this in theaters. This is Dream Scenario. This is an A24 production directed by a guy named Christopher Borgli.
Yep.
I'll tell you where we know him from, actually.
Oh, what?
But this is also one.
I really don't know.
We'll get into it. But after 3 or 4 Nick Cage films, I think this year, this one is actually getting some buzz. Again, there was
his one good one.
There was one that came out right around Dream Scenario.
Yeah.
But finally, this has some legs to it. People are talking about his performance a lot.
Yeah.
And it's A24. So let's get into it a little bit. This is Dream Scenario. Vin, how'd you like it?
Well, Dream Scenario, definitely a very interesting film. I would call it kind of an absurdist dark comedy. Finally got this one under the belt with it doing well enough in limited release to get a wide one. Like I mentioned on the podcast, this had one of my favorite trailers from the year. Not that that's a long list at all, but it was kind of capturing a retro vibe where the premise felt like a good throwback film. But more than anything, it seemed like a perfect fit for our crazy boy Nick Cage. He gets to act dramatically, and his beloved insane manic side can pepper the runtime in these dream sequences. This is also being produced by the equally insane Ari Aster, and felt like something I would see either way after the anomaly that was Beau is Afraid. So
yes.
Yeah, so I was interested to see what he was putting his money towards with this. Dream Scenario, like I said, is this absurdist dark comedy with most of the runtime feeling like a Charlie Kaufman project, such as 1999's Being John Malkovich. It's very meta. It kind of exists in a weird pacing as well with the film. Nick Cage is a nerdy biology professor named Paul Matthews who is suddenly and mysteriously showing up doing nothing in nearly everyone's dream. His study of evolutionary traits might be the only crumb of information we get at pointing to an explanation of the phenomena. Nonetheless, he has skyrocketed into fame as millions of people experience his persona while sleeping. Things take a much darker turn, though, when dreams turn into brutal nightmares and all around innocent Paul having none of the answers. I would say it's been a while since we mentioned it, but this is the best example in a while of what an A24 film feels like.
Oh, big time. Okay.
In being unexpected, in having creepy vibes, and kind of building to an ending that chooses to be dark. I say chooses specifically because there are moments in the story that we could be given more concrete answers for why all of this is happening. It would honestly, I think, result in a drastically different experience. A lot of this experience is just because Paul Matthews and Nick Cage, he's kind of like blowing in the wind. He's just kind of going with it here. To my disappointment, the real experience was quite different than the trailer. I don't think this represented its trailer too much, or the brevity or the lightness of that trailer. It's much more darker. Honestly, most of all, I feel like the story has a difficult message to unpack around fame, cancel culture, and how we react to attention. So much so that, again, I've come a long way since my Nope review. I'm confident in my own reviews that I can say I kind of didn't get the point of this film. I kind of didn't understand that by the end, what was the point of all of this, other than the, just being an absurdist comedy with Nick Cage.
My hope was this film. My first note, by the way, is a definite product of A24.
That's great.
I kind of liked the premise. I thought it was a cool story to go off of. Definitely where they went. I think this movie is strongest in end of first act, getting into the second act a little bit, as we're seeing more people's dreams. I wish they just spent 2 weeks in a writer's room and be like, what's some of the craziest dreams?
Absolutely.
It would have been fun to go through more. But those scenarios were cool. Those sequences were cool. The fame or search for fame, it gives us a reason or a believable reason of why our character is acting the way he is for half the film. Then I wish it focused more on the family aspect, and it didn't. It kind of went towards another way, and it felt boring, slow, and unimportant. And I can only imagine that's when, especially when you were like, what's the point of this?
Yeah.
Why are we here exactly?
It felt like it almost was unnecessarily beating up his character. It felt cruel in some ways, where I didn't understand why that cruelty was being done, what message it was trying to get across through exactly where the story goes. Where I absolutely agree with you 100%. I wish the entire movie was just going through all the different dreams people were having, because the film craft here is, I think, what's impressive about it.
Yeah, so. and how we get into it, I mean, really, the first 2/3 of the film I'm kind of all right with, but it gets to a point where it's just things aren't developing quick enough, and where the story goes is not strong.
Right.
And it's kind of a shame, because I think there's a pathway that they could go, like I said, going towards more of the family route, or what this does to a family, that could be touching of the heart more.
Sure.
Have more impact.
Or have something poignant to say.
Have more depth or sad.
Yeah.
And I think it could make an ending better, whether that's redemption or even continuing to fall apart, kind of.
Sure. Absolutely. But what I really loved about this film, and why I would say it is worth a watch, especially, I mean, it maybe if only you are a Nick Cage fan, is just little things around how the film is presented. I love the editing here. It's very clever, and adds to some of the visual comedy that associates with Nick Cage just popping up in people's dreams. In this way, I feel the movie exceeded my expectations. When characters explain their dreams to Cage, we are constantly cutting into the scenes themselves, showing outrageous situations that he pops up in. I would say the visual variety on screen is great, showing dozens of different styles that's just so entertaining to see play out with Nick Cage just walking on set. He feels like he's walking on set, he's like he doesn't belong, which I feel like really speaks volumes of how well crafted these dream sequences are, and the purpose of the film.
I just wish there was more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And here's the note. I've never seen anything from our director, Christopher Borgley, but this movie shows why a director-editor talent can be such a powerhouse in the entertainment side of a film. Of course, course, leaning on one of my favorite directors, Edgar Wright, of course. But
he's so involved.
Yeah.
So basically, this director, what's his name again? Borgley?
Borgley, yeah.
Christopher Borgley. He has done a bunch of shorts, but he's also done, I believe, one, maybe two. Second thing he's ever done was a music video.
Okay.
So he's also a music video director, which is on theme for this year.
Yeah.
But it's for one of my favorite songs from a guy that we both like that no one else knows, is Todd Terje.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we're going to have to watch that later now.
Hell yeah,
But,
absolutely.
yeah, the music video for Inspector Norse is the song.
Great track.
Right, great track,
Yeah.
exactly.
Wow.
Second thing he's ever done. And then just a ton of shorts, a barrage of shorts.
Yeah.
And only recently getting into some more feature-length stuff.
Interesting.
So I think the only thing that really keeps this movie going is Nick Cage.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're only there for him. And I would say this is probably top 5 of the many movies that he's been doing. His anywhere from 2 to 5 a year or something.
Yeah.
I think this is one of his best since his Charlie Kaufman adaptation role.
Oh, really?
And
wow.
I like what he does here because Charlie Kaufman, he was going off of a real person.
Yes.
And Charlie Kaufman was also involved in that project.
Yep.
Where this was, he kind of had to invent this character and then do the character.
Yep.
And I feel like he made it his own. He invented a guy, and I felt like he played this guy really, really well.
Yeah.
The way he talks, his mannerisms. We get a little bit of Nick Cage.
Yep.
But
His nerdiness.
Yeah, but he stays in the rubric of this guy, and I think he differentiates himself from that Charlie Kaufman adaptation that he did, an adaptation.
Sure.
And that was cool to see. So it was good to see him in a good performance.
Similar neurotic vibes of that.
Yeah, they were definitely,
I also enjoy the intellect of the character, being in his like kind of professor field and wanting to go to high-end dinner parties and whatnot.
Right.
You know, the things he desires of the fame and then how that fame turns around on him.
Right, very
know?
stubborn because he has intellect, also stubborn because technically he is right, and he can't get over the fact that maybe he just needs to cool his jets.
Right.
So there's some fun with the film. I just found it to be probably 20 minutes too long, and like I said, just that third act, I just think sinks it, and that's when you're like, okay, I think we're pretty much good here.
I don't know if ending earlier. I'm not sure.
It's just the route that they take I'm not a fan of.
Yeah, I was really kind of searching because clearly this movie's trying to say something, but I really don't know what it's trying to say.
This is so fun. Andrew and I had the same conversation.
Really? It's just like, I was really trying to unpack it, but this does have an odd ending, which I would say it feels a bit meaningless. But maybe that is also the point in a story around dreams.
This surprises me.
Really?
The ending, like the last 2 minutes. Is that what you're saying?
Last half hour,
Okay.
the declining action, if
Right,
you will. I would say plenty of dialogue is positioned around these events, especially in Paul's professor crowd, but I found it difficult to see what they all point at, especially when this character is just beat up so much, both literally and metaphorically, for something he has no control over. I mean, it felt that's where I say cruel. It felt a little unneeded. I don't know. Message aside, I think this is yet another solid movie in Nick Cage's later career, despite him still acting in many quantity over quality. I think it's also interesting that in the press circuit for this, he's now talking about finally retiring, which I guess those
I
back
have not
taxes,
seen him doing a lot of press on this.
I guess the back taxes are paid off then. So.
But what's he saying? He's giving us dates?
He says he has a handful of movies left in him. So
that's 6 months for Nick Cage. Oh,
right.
No,
right.
I still want Pig 2. There was rumblings of Pig 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think best performer, by the way, Pig, he was great in. We love Pig.
Yes.
But I also really liked, you thought it was all right, but I thought he was great in last year's Not Everything Everywhere. Massive weight of unbearable weight of massive talent.
Yeah.
Where he played himself. That was a good movie.
Sure.
And a comedy that people should go and watch.
Yeah. I think...
Sorry.
let it be restated that I may not be the biggest Nick Cage fan. I think.
But you love him.
Yes, I've actually learned to like him a lot more, especially after watching adaptation.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Pig and this as well, I would say.
Yeah.
He does a lot. It's just that it's hard to tell when is the indicator. I actually think when he dyes his hair is the indicator on what type of role we're getting with Nick Cage.
I would say you're trying to study. You're not even close.
No.
to opening that seventh dimension. I don't even know. I wonder what's going to do. I bet he's going to do National Treasure 3 and be like, okay, I'm good. I've got the money.
There wasn't a 3?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
There's going to be a 3.
No, I mean, that's certainly a moneymaker right there.
I don't want him to go.
Has the ship sailed with National Treasure though? Who gives a crap about National Treasure except like us?
I think when they do it again, people are going to care.
Okay.
And I think Nick Cage, because he went away.
Yeah.
And he had National Treasure, and then he went away, and then he was making all these films, and then finally he got some. I forget which one brought him back. Was it Mandy? Maybe.
Oh yes, I think Mandy's a definitely turning point for like, whoa, he's kind
of good. Still does crap.
Yeah, right.
Just don't do the crap.
Right,
he's working too much.
There's still crap like within this year,
right? like 2 others. I think.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Anyway,
but I would say give this film some of your time, especially if you're a fan of Nick Cage. But also, at least from my position and my perspective on this, some impressive filmmaking from Borgley. Personally, I will be keeping an eye out for Borgley and future projects from him because I really did like what was done in so much variety of tone and feel in these dream sequences. I think it shows a lot of range for him as a director, a writer, and an editor as well. With that said, we're going to go ahead and give Dream Scenario a 69.
Okay, 69. I think it belongs right there. I'll be honest. I don't have a Tommy Two Shoes for this.
Oh, really?
Same with Waterloo. I just don't care enough. When you're saying I think definitely make time, I don't know. I think if you're into seeing yet another interesting, if you want to see kind of an interesting story and a good Nick Cage performance, that's when you watch this.
A meta story,
right?
A different type of story. This is
an A24 story. Don't worry, there's fart noises in this too. Which is A24 loves it.
They love the fart noises. Yeah, fart jokes are back.
I just don't care enough. Something inside me wants me to make it a rule where I need to give a 2 shoes on every Nick Cage film we watch.
Oh wow, just Nick Cage specifically.
Because I think that it just belongs somehow. But that might be a retroactive thing. Maybe once his career is over, I'll take a look at things.
Right. Well, that'll be special, the Tom retrospective.
But let's just say 69, I think, is a good score. I think it's actually pretty fair. I think you're doing pretty good justice with that.
I think because personally for me, it didn't crack 70s because of actual film experience, but I think
it falls flat too.
Yeah, exactly. I think in film craft though, and acting and concept, it's there.
Yeah, very good. And same thing with. Let's keep an eye on Christopher Borgley, this director, because the last thing he did before this was a short, because he's done most of his stuff is short.
Interesting.
It's a 5-minute short movie called Willem Dafoe.
Okay.
Literally, the write-up is a short film about what's his name again? The actor. Christopher Borgley tries hard to remember, and it's just called Willem Dafoe. So I like where this guy goes.
Yeah. Definitely interesting.
All right, Finn, let's get into our final film here. I don't know if this is too much on people's radar. One, we are Godzilla heavy.
Sure.
Well, the podcast is very Godzilla heavy. Yeah. But we do have this show. We have some of the American films that have just coming out. We're mixing him with King Kong now.
Yep.
And this is a really true Japanese made film here.
Yes, a mainline Toho release.
Yes.
If you've listened to our special folks.
Now, this has been released into theaters. I'll take a look at actually how much of a wide release it really is. But you had no problem seeing it, I believe.
No, yeah. If anything, I was shocked of of the availability of it being. It is a full-fledged Japanese movie.
Right. So kind of cool. Let's get into it though, Vin, and describe it a bit. This is called Godzilla Minus One. It's directed by Takashi Yamazaki. And I'm always trying to figure out how do we pair this up with the Godzilla special, but maybe let's just treat this with a movie of itself, talk about the movie, and then if it fits somewhere in that special, we can kind of talk about it.
Sure. Well, I think the good thing about this is that this is cut from a different cloth. I can successfully say among all the hype, and maybe a little bit of overhype around this film, depending on, people are really calling this not only the best Godzilla film, the best film of 2023.
Okay,
which,
wow.
I
knew it was getting good buzz. I don't think it was that good.
You're right, exactly. So I feel like this is cut from a different cloth in how it feels. It does almost, in a lot of ways, doesn't feel like any of the Godzilla films we covered. Any of them.
That's very surprising.
Exactly.
One thing I will say, Godzilla, as far as Toho Godzilla Productions, which there's now 37 made, and one in the canon or one being made.
Yep.
There's 4 eras. And our last era started in 2016, and it was jumped off with Shin Godzilla, a film that you absolutely love.
Love.
Since then, we've had really only 3 animation films come out.
Yeah. They're anime, and they're also a Netflix tie-in as well.
Right. And then other than that, we've had the American done films.
Exactly.
So this is really our next live action kind of Japan production. Does this belong in that era, or are we in a new era?
It's tough. I think the mark for me is a redesign of Godzilla himself, marking those different eras.
I thought Toho was like very specific as far as their eras. I thought they set them.
They are. In this case, though, from what I researched, it does seem like it is falling in the Reiwa era, even though it is the Godzilla here compared to Shin Godzilla are totally different. And also different how they're used as like monsters and like a cinematic type of thing.
Okay, very interesting. Okay, so let's just get into the film on itself, Godzilla Minus One. It's my understanding that this title, which I can't stand personally, but the idea is that this is post-World War II, Japan is totally flattened, and it's basically ground zero.
Yes.
But now Big Bad Godzilla shows up, and so we got to bring it down a notch to minus one.
Really?
Oh, I thought
I thought minus one was referring to it's the first prequel ever done to Godzilla 54. No Godzilla has ever touched a post World War II or before a 1954 type of setting.
Interesting.
So it's not Godzilla 1, it's Godzilla minus 1. I don't like the title.
But I believe it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah. This is what is less than ground zero.
Wow.
Minus one. I still hate the name.
Yeah. Not great. This comes from, like Tom said, Takeshi Yamazaki, who I know from a recent Lupin the Third movie. His fame comes from adapting a lot of stories from anime, so I was pleased to see that he was writing an original story here as well. Folks, if you have not heard the hype around this film online, you will be shocked to know that the story and the writing make it one of the strongest Godzilla movies to date. A statement I am frankly stunned by, because story was never a good quality in these films. Stories is kind of what you just sat through on this. Only very rarely does the story, dip into a good quality. It's funny how we geared up with that Godzilla special, though, now having a double release of a Japanese and American Godzilla film coming to theaters, and the trailer for the next Godzilla King Kong film dropping during this hype. It felt very appropriate that they put it into this.
Felt very CGI too.
yeah, for real. This is a full-fledged Toho production, though, for the mainline Godzilla of the Japanese films, and most likely what I thought was going to be the start of a new era. I don't know if that is the case with how they're describing it, whether it's in the Reiwa era. For me, our boy Goji sporting a new design is the main feature there, and much like with Shin Godzilla, we also shed any man-in-suit design for full CGI, further updating this 70-year franchise. 70 years.
70 years. Yes, sir.
Unreal. Godzilla Minus One does the unbelievable by setting itself before the beloved original 1954 and gives us a post-World War II story with Japan in shambles. I call this unbelievable because the kaiju movies are largely mainstream popcorn fun, and probably scared off from the drama tied innately to the atomic bombings. Minus One, however, leans into this drama, without a doubt being the most emotionally charged monster film I have ever seen.
Okay, a lot of human elements.
Yeah, a lot of human elements. We follow Koichi, a cowardice kamikaze pilot, with a surprisingly meaningful arc. His fear of war and combat only thrust him further towards a life he wants to protect. After a mysterious confrontation with a proto-Godzilla, we see Koichi build a family through hardship and determination, but despite how heartwarming that story may be, that story of resolve may be, Godzilla is fated to ruin this man's life at every turn. Folks, you can see in that summary of how this film is just cut from a different cloth. I don't think there was, in all of the movies that I covered, short reviews or not, mini reviews or not, never was there a focus on themes of family. Themes of anything around this. Not only that, the drama infused in this film is both personal and nationalistic. The fact that the film and the story juggles themes of PTSD and survivor guilt is truly insane in a monster movie. While watching the film, I asked myself, was this silly to be putting in so much drama in a kaiju movie? Was it like, pearls before swine?
Right.
I can confidently say that Minus One earns its tone, though, by being genuine and authentic. Not once does this World War II setting dip into exploitation of the era, and the focus on family strikes a surprising chord, especially when considering the modern issues of Japan. This family focus, I feel, was heartwarming, inspiring, and kind of around a trauma bonding with these. Koichi's family is not a normal family. It is a inherited child and a woman he technically doesn't, romantically love, but they stay together through the hardship. Again, these are not. This is not a description for anything Godzilla so far. You know what I mean? So I think its authenticness and how that hits for maybe even some modern issues as well, I think is very, very impressive.
Yes. And the only caveat I would say, as long as it is portrayed well, as long as the actors are doing a good job, as long as it looks good on screen.
Yes.
This is kind of reminiscent a little bit of the show on Apple.
Oh, really?
And it's garbage.
Oh, interesting.
It's just dumb. You feel nothing for the characters or with the characters.
Interesting.
If this has a heart behind it, which sometimes just Japanese productions just can get that better.
Sure. Look at the Ghibli movies.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But that makes sense that, we have mass destruction going on by a creature.
Yeah.
It's good to get some human aspect.
Sure.
Because sometimes it's just skyscrapers filled with thousands of people are just dying and it has no real effect on the actual audience member, really.
Right,
yeah.
right. Like I said, I think what I was wrestling with when watching this, I was saying, is this too serious? Is the drama like ridiculous to put with a Godzilla film? But I think it earns it. In a very uncharacteristic note from me, this feels in a good way like how a 50s film is trying to be inspiring and trying to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. Similar vibes here. It works though because there's so much tragedy around this post-World War II setting.
Sure.
And then more being piled on top with a monster attack.
Now, in 2016, Shin Godzilla, you liked
very different.
Or I'll say again, you liked that film a lot. But that was very serious in dealing with the drama of things, but from the government side of things and how to deal with this. So, it kind of just sounds like you also just serious Godzilla films is nice. Because you don't always get serious Godzilla films.
You definitely don't.
A lot or not.
You definitely don't.
So this is the new era that we're getting, the new age of Godzilla.
Yeah, and
from
maybe
Toho. Serious. I'm good with that.
Yeah. Maybe that's why this still falls in the Reiwa era or however they're defining this, even though they're very different films.
Yep.
This being a smaller film with family focus and honestly, Shin Godzilla playing out more like a Star Trek episode where it's about problem solving and brainstorming.
Yeah.
Best of all is that smaller scale for the story, which is a quality I loved in some of the earliest Godzilla films, mainly Godzilla versus Mothra in 1964, where we don't see the typical government involvement here as well, since the government is in shambles in that transitionary period coming out of World War II. They're not really they don't have a part to play. Comedically, Godzilla versus Mothra was more about like a legal dispute over about a monster egg. So I mean, it wasn't great. But here there is a similar quality that the people of Tokyo are organizing on their own, and once again comes off as authentically inspiring in a lot of ways.
Okay,
I think that's why people are walking away so positively on this, especially in international audiences, that there is a heartwarming story that is oddly within this kaiju monster horror. Again, is not something that is done before in Godzilla, and is really pulled off well.
Not done before, really?
No. I mean, listen.
Well, I know you would know. You would be the guy.
Right.
You would be the guy to know. But that surprised me because I always thought there was some type of love interest a lot in some of these. Or maybe I'm just accustomed to the American ones.
Yeah.
The 4 or 5 main American films.
True, especially I think it's 2014, the Bryan Cranston one.
Right, yeah.
That certainly has a kind of a impacted family focus, but I feel like the fall through on this is that if the government was to step in and it was now suddenly the nation of Japan versus Godzilla, it would lose that focus a little bit. In this, it does a great job at the people of Tokyo kind of rallying in a again authentically inspiring kind of way.
Okay, cool.
As far as visuals go, there are actually some cool shout-outs to Godzilla 54, such as the iconic train eating sequence and also a nod to the oxygen destroyer. Design-wise, Godzilla is reminiscent of that early otter face that we talked about so much before. But luckily, coming nowhere close to it being silly or the defender of Japan type of persona in early movies. He is very much the antagonist. He's very much mean, and that definitely is it definitely leans towards the horror themes. His back has super jagged spikes right out of the Millennium era in the 2000s, and he is satisfyingly mean to fill the role of a monster that we hate because of these dramatic elements. I think more than ever, it was important that the anger of the people against Godzilla was important here, that we didn't muddy that with him possibly defending Japan or something like that.
Sure.
As so many times.
Yeah, taking off the hero role.
Exactly.
I'll make a couple comments too, just of what he looks like, because it's such a big element of per Godzilla film. How does Godzilla look?
Yeah.
His face is very face-like.
Okay.
It's almost like they could have put a voice to him.
Oh,
wow. Like Smaug the Dragon almost. I almost feel like he's too, I don't know, he's...
It's the otter.
I don't know if he's too mouthy. It's otter.
Yeah.
They made his arms bigger and more muscular, and it's weird to see a Godzilla that's like ready to box when we're a little bit more accustomed sometimes to T-Rex arm Godzilla.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it is a little bit striking to see him with just, I don't know, he has just his shoulders, his chest, his neck, and face. He seems, I can't say more human, but more just looks like a brawler. More like he looks like a brawler, basically.
I'm sure Toho would be delighted to hear that because they would probably love nothing more to turn around and do a bunch of other verses,
Well, let's just say, like, what did you think of this compared to sickly or gangly Shin Godzilla? Godzilla.
Well, let me get it straight. Shin Godzilla is like my favorite Godzilla.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
And that's mostly because of the design with Hideki Ono. Here, I think it's a good mix because there are so many nods to specifically Godzilla 1954, the first one. If this is to play in the canon of Godzilla at all, I think that makes sense as well. Him being more, I don't know, sea-based creature, lizard-like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Which is good.
Yeah.
I just feel like it looks like he can talk. And it's weird to say, but it looks like he's a character that can talk.
Well, I'm happy to say, spoiler alert, he doesn't talk. But overall, though, I can happily say, believe the hype on this film. With a $15 million budget, you might expect it be the quality in production to land it alongside many Kaiju B movies still coming out. But Yamazaki and team have hit every mark that they were gunning for. And this effectively lands as my new third favorite Godzilla film. We're going to go ahead and give Godzilla Minus One a 74.
74% for Godzilla Minus One. Okay, so folks, if you're not aware of our Godzilla special, you can go ahead and check it out. All the time codes are there too, so you can jump
skip around. Absolutely.
Because we covered 15 films on that episode, and only out of those 4 Vin thought were essential to understand Godzilla, the essential Godzilla movies we call them.
Yep.
But technically, this would be the 5th.
I would say so.
It's almost a shame we didn't wait for this now.
It's almost a tragedy.
Because we wanted 5 on there.
Yeah, I really did want 5.
Wow, excellent.
And on top of this being in, one of the eras, I think this is well deserved to spotlight in that way.
And it's such a big deal. A $15 million budget is nothing today. Nothing. I mean, that is an insidious budget. Yeah. And with the sheer scale and the size.
It's so true. That is a Blumhouse budget.
Yeah. And in this size, I think Insidious was 15.
Yeah.
And for the size and the fact that you're dealing with Japan in this film, how much CGI you're just going to have to use that you weren't completely thrown off, or that this just wasn't like a TV quality, or TV movie quality or something like that. 74 really speaks volumes. Yeah. So very cool. Very cool. Godzilla Minus One. Okay, folks, don't sleep on that. Wow, Vin, looking at these films, looking at these scores here, anything else you want to add? Anything else to touch on?
Got plenty of new movies still in December. We are not done yet. Exciting for next week, though. Yeah, exactly.
We were thirsty, I feel like, for a lot of this year.
Especially for, you and me know, planning for the first couple months of 2024. We're going to be thirsty again.
Oh, that's okay. We have some great shows planned for the 24. Don't forget the Tom Dailies.
Yes.
That's why this December is so important, too. We might have some big heavy hitters.
Yeah, absolutely, coming out much like last year, how it was at the very end. We got some of the most important films.
Usually how it is. They stack them right after Thanksgiving. That's when you know.
Yeah, absolutely. But next week we have Poor Things with Emma Stone getting a lot of love, and then of course Papa Miyazaki with The Boy and the Heron.
Finally coming out.
I am nervous. I mean, it's probably the 6th time over Miyazaki has said he was going to be retiring after this film, so we'll see. But I think it looks very good, and it will be something I'll be watching in also English dub as well, and I think intentionally so, because I think the English dub cast is pretty
Christian
awesome.
Bale is back, correct?
Yep.
So, yeah, it's a famous director, if you want to get into director a little bit, because I think do people know? Is it general knowledge?
Studio Ghibli, I think it's entered into a lot of public knowledge. But yeah, Hayao Miyazaki, arguably the godfather of anime. Honestly, he's the I've always referred to him as the Scorsese of the anime industry. So that'll maybe describe it a little bit.
And created Studio Ghibli,
yes,
which is just pumps out like Howl's Moving Castle.
Yep.
Other films I can't think of.
We'll save that
Away.
for next week.
Okay. All right, Vin. Thank you so much for watching these films here, Vin. Thanks for stopping by. Folks at home will run it down one more time. We have Waterloo with a 71%, May December with a 56, Silent Night with a 33, Dream Scenario with a 69, and finally Godzilla Minus One with a 74%. Folks, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast. Hey, if you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating or tell a friend about us. If you're wondering if a film is worth the watch or just like to see more movie ratings from Vince, be sure to stop by thedailyratings.com, where we have our ever-expanding catalog of films. Also, if you found value in the podcast or our site, become a producer and go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com. You can donate whatever amount of value you feel you receive from us. We're looking to build this into something large and great, folks, but we also want to be independent from those corporate sponsors. So we greatly appreciate any support from you all. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.